This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
Faith, love, and pickleball. Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Before we get into this week's topic, just a quick reminder to get our free app. Why? Because as the gatekeepers have once again shown, they will go back into our archives, histories, and find things that they don't like. You might have noticed that just a couple of weekends ago, we suddenly went quiet for a week, and then on a Saturday or Sunday, uploaded 6 new programs all at once. That was not by design. It's because we said something that they didn't like. I'm talking about you YouTube subscribers out there. And God bless you for subscribing and sharing our YouTube channel. But if we cross swords with the people who own the sandbox, it is their sandbox. They get to make the rules. And so we were barred from uploading anything new for a week. And if by some chance at some point in the next 6 weeks we say something else again, or they go back, say, 10 years, this program has been around a while, and find something else that they don't like, well, we could just disappear altogether. So please get our free app. It's available for iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets. You can also get our Roku version if you want. Take it directly to your big screen, Roku, Apple TV. We got versions for those platforms as well, and you can find it at VFTB.net. Look in the top menu bar, or go to our main website, which is gilberthouse.org/app, gilberthouse.org/app, and thank you for bypassing the gatekeepers of big tech. Well, this week's topic sounds like it might be something totally different, but it's really not. It's really addressing the subject that we Christians should always be concerned with: relationships, love, Jesus Christ, but approaching it from a different perspective. And that's good, because there is no one-size-fits-all template for how we witness and share the love and the faith that we have, the hope that we have in Jesus Christ, and the love that he showed us through his sacrifice. Our guest holds an MS degree in clinical psychology, and she's been many years in counseling individuals, women, children, couples, in always from a biblical perspective. And she's the founder of Heart Tug International, the host of Bible News Radio, which is an international program that addresses news of the day from a Christian perspective. And we honestly need more of that. And her book, Pickleball Faith, Inspiration on and Off the Court. It is our honor to welcome to the program Stacy Lynn Harp. Stacy, I think the first question most people are going to have is, what the heck is pickleball?
What the heck is pickleball? Fun. Actually, pickleball is, it's like tennis. It's like ping pong. It's kind of like the child of both of those things. I don't know. I'm just kind of being funny, but it really is. I mean, it has elements of ping pong, tennis, badminton, and it's just fun. People think, that it's just for old people, but it's not. It's actually been around almost 60 years.
I did a little looking. I went to the actual website for the amateur association that governs pickleball here in the United States. And yeah, it does look like it's fun. The court is a lot smaller than tennis. So for, people who are not athletes, who might have some knee or ankle issues, it's actually a way to get some exercise without having to risk damaging your joints. But you described this though as pickleball finding you
Yes.
after you and Randall relocated from California to Spring Hill, Tennessee, which
Yeah.
had to be somewhat of a culture shock. What do you mean by pickleball finding you?
Okay. So if you've ever lived in a big city,
Grew up in
your whole
Chicago.
life.
Yep.
Right. Okay. I don't know. Well, and you've gone to, a rural area.
Yeah, our neighbors are cattle and coyotes mainly.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Southern California and came here to Middle Tennessee, and culture shock was massive. I mean, it was, I couldn't find a good restaurant. I mean, it was awful. It's just horrible. And you don't know anybody when you leave a state you grew up in. You don't know anybody, in the new state. So the culture shock was really amazing. And I found out probably 6 months after I moved here that there was a local recreation center, which I never stepped foot in California, anything like that. There was nothing called that in California. There was the Y, there was 24-hour fitness, all those places, but not a rec center. So I found this rec center and I was like, okay, here I am. My friend up the street, who's 85 at the time, invited me to a water aerobics class. And I said, okay. So I went to this old women's water aerobics class and was introduced to the rec center. And then one day I was walking around the track and people were playing pickleball. And I was like, ooh, this is like tennis. I played tennis since high school. I'm really good at it. And so I went down and I learned how to play. And my very first time I ran into the net, it knocked over and these men came over and said, are you okay? I go, yeah, I'm fine. The net's not, but I'm good. So, yeah.
So this was an opportunity then to meet and bond with other people in kind of a different way.
Yeah, kind of. Not in a way that I had expected. I mean, I'm an outgoing person, but I'm also a very introverted person. And, and my goal here, though, Derek, was that I didn't want all my life to be in the church. I didn't want my social life to be in the church. I had this disdain for wanting just to be in fellowship inside the local church. And Tennessee's church, there's literally a church or three on every street, every corner. And I didn't want my social life to be there. So when I found pickleball, I met all these people that I never would have met otherwise because I didn't go to their church or or whatever. So it was just amazing just to meet people that were not in church.
And actually, I can relate to that. Sharon and I both can relate to that, actually, because we have been doing our Sunday morning Bible study since 2014. And in fact, you and Randall helped out one weekend when Sharon was not available. And one of the very early episodes you helped out. But both of us are kind of different thinkers as you and Randall are. And sometimes that can be difficult. And I'm not casting aspersions on church fellowship or anything like that. We were blessed back in Illinois that I went to church with several guys that I sang with in the Barbershop Harmony Society. So it's like, hey, great, we'll just form another quartet. We'll just sing gospel stuff. So that was great for me. But Sharon never fit in with the soccer mom crowd, so the PTA or the parents organizations at school or at church were difficult to fit in. So finding another way of fitting in has always been kind of a challenge for us. But it's interesting that it was this random thing, pickleball, that brought you in. Now, but outside of a church setting, how does this then allow you to connect in a way where you are able to, fulfill the Great Commission?
Well, well, that's a great question because, I actually had somebody else ask me, did you just go to pickleball in order to evangelize people? And I'm like, no, I went to play pickleball in order to exercise because I like to play sports. I've always been very competitive that way. You might not know it from my beautiful muscular physique here, but, I actually am very athletic. I've been I'm a lifeguard. I can swim the full length of the pool underwater, I played tennis for years. And then when pickleball came about, here everybody's a Christian, right? But when you're spending, at the time I wrote my book, I was spending 5 days a week playing. I'd go down for 2-3 hours because there was a wait. You have to wait between games. And so between those times when you're seeing people every day or 4 or 5 times a week, you develop relationships. And some of my funniest conversations were with other people, and we would sit on the bench while we were waiting, and people would bring up questions like, well, what about Noah? How did he get all those animals on the ark? Really benign stuff to somebody who's understands scripture, but to most Christians you talk to, they are completely clueless. Just about basic stuff you should really know. So
So this was a way then of developing a community in sort of just a non-traditional way.
Yeah, what was interesting about that is that I came up with the idea to start a Facebook group for Spring Hill, because I wanted a way to connect with the people that I knew. And we have almost 200 people in that group now, just to give you an idea. And I live in a little hick town here, right? And then I came up with a t-shirt logo, and I ended up selling like 50 t-shirts with Spring Hill Pickleball on it to all the people at the time that were there. And so somehow, and people bought it. That's the funny part. And then people would come to me and they'd be like, well, what do we do here? You're one of the leaders here. And I'm like, I don't know. So I started writing about some of my experiences, and it didn't end up any, as an author, most of the time books don't end up how you think that they're going to end up.
Yeah.
No. So,
well, how did this inspire you? I mean, this is not something where you would go into the situation thinking, I mean, Sharon and I went with our most recent Israel tour. We knew we were going to go do some things and see some places early in the tour that would inform the book that we're working on. Okay. We're working on this book. We're going to go see these places, and this will inspire us. And yeah. Okay. So that was pretty logical. It just strikes me as, and I mentioned in the opening of the program here, that this might seem like a really odd topic. Hey, he's talking about pickleball this week after talking about, Nephilim and angels and demons, for weeks and whatever. But it's really not. It's really just the same subject, which is the Great Commission and how we fulfill it, just starting from a different place. Again, how does this inspire you to say, hey, this would really help people?
Oh, well, okay. Have you ever judged somebody wrongly?
Yeah.
All the time, right? I mean, we do it constantly. And I love, in the beginning, I wasn't saying Linda's name, but I will say Linda now because Linda knows. I write about Linda in my book. And it's really more about me. It's about my attitude. And I was playing Linda. Linda was one of the very first people I met. She's a short, like 5-foot woman, twiggy. She has dark hair that's dyed. She's Southern and probably about 75 years old. And one day I was playing on the other side of the net because I play against everybody and I play with all beginners, right? And in my mind, I was like, you know what? I already played 3 or 4 games with this woman. I don't want to play against her again. And I'm very kind of irritated, but whatever. And here I am playing this game. And the game gets over, and I had this thought in my mind, which I believe was the Lord. And he said, why don't you ask some people, what's one of the hardest things you've ever gotten through, but you didn't think you would? There's about 50 people that day waiting around 3 courts only available. And so we get done playing this game. I go around, I start asking my friends, hey, JR, what'd you get through that you didn't think you'd ever get through? Well, my divorce. Somebody else, what'd you get through? My bankruptcy. And then I get to Linda. So I walk up to her and I'm like, I'm short and I'm rounder. But I went up to her and I said, so Linda, what's one thing you got through that you never thought you'd get through? And without a beat, she says to me, learning to walk again twice.
Oh.
Appropriate response, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the response I was hoping for. And inside my head, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
So I said to her, I said, really? So what happened? She said, well, when I was a kid, I got ran over by a car. And when I was older, I learned, I fell off a horse. Now, what's interesting is her husband, Will, he plays pickleball too, and he lost his left hand. I think it's his left hand. Yeah, it is. Or maybe it's his. Anyway, he doesn't have one hand. He's a great pickleball player, though, too. And I don't know what his story is, but he's, the husband of her. And what that really taught me and the Lord taught me was, look, everybody has a backstory. Here I am judging Linda, thinking, oh, what a pain in the butt. Ugh. I have to play her. And then I asked that one little question, and I learned that I'm literally playing with a miracle as opposed to a menace in my head. And so as I thought about these things, I started to write them down. And then one afternoon, another friend of mine came up to me. She had a cupboard pie. And I don't even know what a cupboard pie is. I'm not Southern, but whatever. She came up to me and she said, "Hey, we're trying to raise money for the Philippines. Would you give some money to support? We'll give you a cupboard pie." And I'm like, "No, you know what? I'm not interested." Now, I know to know me is to love me, right? But that day, I was feeling a lot of self-pity and like in my mind going, you know what? Nobody cares about me or my ministry and blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to set a boundary. And so I said, no, I wanted to see if I could just say no. And I said, no. And she says to me, "Not even $1?" And I'm like, "No, not even $1." And she's like, "Wow, I'm so sorry." And she walked away. I go out to play the next game of pickleball. And as I'm playing and hitting the ball, our loving Father is saying, "Hey, you know that $20 you have in your backpack that's in your car that you're saving to go out to lunch with some people? Go get it. Give it to her." I'm like, oh, man. So I'm playing this whole game and I'm arguing with God, right? I'm like, ah. And so at the end of the game, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I walked out to my car. And then as I'm walking out to my car, the Lord, as loving as he is, he says to me, "You know those greenies that you've been getting from Alex for about 2 years? Greenies are those dog treats that, are really expensive. You give to Grover. I live in Tennessee. Mars is here. They're created there. And Alex worked there. And anyway, long story short, I'm like, yes, yeah. Lord's like, "How much do you think that saved you?" I'm like, "A lot of money." So I'm walking down it feels like a mile to get to my car to get the money. I'm just like, I know, that was the point, So I get to the car and I get my money and I'm by this time I'm actually crying and I'm like, "Lord, I'm so sorry. I'm sensitive." I walk back into the rec center and I interrupt this friend's game. She's in the middle of the game and I walked up to her and I looked at her and I said, "Here's $20. And I want you to know that I'm really sorry. The Lord just disciplined me and told me I was a brat." And she looked at me, and she's a believer. She looked at me and was like dumbfounded, like, what the hell just happened? And I said, "I'm so sorry, I gotta go." And so that's what my book's about. It's about things like that. And really it's about the sanctification process that we're all in, but nobody ever talks about. And I will tell you that the feedback that I've gotten from my local friends who've read it, has been anywhere from, "You know what, how did you know I think that?" to, "You know what, I'm lonely too." Even unbelieving friends of mine have read my book because it's not packed with scripture. It wasn't intended to be a Bible study, but people are using it that way. But unbelieving friends have come to me after they've read it and they said, "I loved your book." And I'm like, okay. I was so afraid to publish it because it's so vulnerable.
You make a statement early in the book that might surprise some folks, because I think most of us here in the Western world like to think here in America, like to think that we're all okay. Hey, we're doing fine. We've got, stuff. And when we're not feeling fine, we can drink stuff or take stuff that'll make us feel fine so that we're not dealing with our stuff. But you just come right out and say, "I'm convinced that most people are lonely." Was that based on your observations of the people that you encountered when you joined this pickleball community?
Not totally, but I think it's just based on culture in general. I think we're some of the most connected people technology-wise, but we're the most disconnected, really. That social media is it's ironic. We're on social media, but if you look at research and you look at just infant-child bonding with the parents, what really scares me is that we've raised a generation of people who who connected to a screen and not to another person.
Yeah.
And so we have fake intimacy, I think. And during COVID, as you know, when people were like, okay, this is the only way we can meet, a lot of people went crazy and suicide rates went up, domestic violence went up. My background as a therapist, I was, just going, no. And I was in a lot of network meetings during those times, talking to distressed fathers who are like, I'm at home with my wife and kids, and I'm about ready to kill these guys, So I think the loneliness aspect has been prevalent for a very long time. It's just that certain things bring it out. And, it's interesting. I just saw some other research from Dr. Daniel Amen, who actually taught at Vanguard, where I went to college. And he was talking about how people who play pickleball and racket sports actually tend to live longer and they're healthier because our psychomotor ability with our brain and reflexes, it keeps our balance good and all this other stuff. So the social aspect of a sport, plus for you and me as we get older, I mean, I'm going to be 55 this year.
You're a kid.
I know. Well, Randall just turned 59 a couple of days ago, but but my parents didn't exercise. So our generation, at least me, Gen X, it's definitely there is a thing. And not only that, but when I was in grad school 20 years ago, I was telling people back then, internet addiction, porn addiction, all that was going to be rampant, and people laughed at me.
Mm-hmm.
But now look at us.
Oh, sure. Yeah. This idea then of you mentioned the connection between the brain and our motor skills and our actual overall health, both physical and emotional and spiritual. You deal with the subject of the mind or mindset in the book.
Yes.
And specifically relating it to pickleball as, the beginning player mindset versus the tournament player mindset. How do you transfer that into the idea of relationship, community, love, and witnessing even?
Well, I translate it this way. It all comes down to the community and how people get along, right? So the beginner mindset in pickleball is basically, when there's a new person, like today I played with a 13-year-old kid. He was my partner, taller than me. He could hit the ball good, but he wasn't, he was new. And so obviously I'm not going to yell at him or say, dude, whatever that, you be nice to the people. There were some old people, I'm talking in their 80s, that come and they learn this game. And you got to ask yourself, why would somebody so old want to learn how to play pickleball? Why do you learn anything after you're out of school? Really, for any serious reason versus the tournament, in my book, the tournament issue has more to do with the fact that the tournament players didn't want to play with beginners because they weren't as good. Well, as the Lord would have it, my book here, Stephanie Lane, she's a 3-time U.S. pickleball national champion, and she's a Christian. And just to show you how God's hand was in this book, what cracks me up is she actually showed up to play pickleball on my birthday, like when I turned 48 or something. And I didn't know who she was, but everybody else did. They're like, oh, I can't believe Stephanie's here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, who are you? And she, let's just play pickleball. I'm like, okay. So she played, and she's like, you got quick hands. You're doing great, blah, blah. Versus other people who are like, you know what? I don't want to play with you. First of all, you misjudge somebody by how they look. Just like in tennis. It's not a game about speed. It's a game about placement. Mm-hmm. If you can place the ball, you can make the other side run around. I actually witnessed that today, and I was laughing because the 2 old people on one side were making the kids run around because, and I'm like, because you're not doing it right. So I basically caution the tournament player, and I say, look, you need to play with beginners so that you can teach somebody new. And then eventually those players will get better. And then, you pass on, be nice to each other.
This is, and this is a picture of what we in the church are missing, where we've been raised in a culture that does not respect the wisdom of our elders. And, you know, and I say this as one who's just suddenly realizing I'm the same age as old people, but, so,
Right.
yeah, talking to my sister last week, and she was laughing about how she and my brother-in-law realized that all their friends, including them, are now talking about buying retirement property. Like, ugh. But seriously, we have a culture that tends to look at old people as our elders, I should say, more respectfully, as people with wisdom from which we can learn, and vice versa. Sometimes you find the tournament level players, those who've acquired a lifetime worth of wisdom, looking at kids and just saying, you kids today, yeah, instead of taking the time to mentor them. But there needs to be some give on both sides, and I would say that this would probably be the same in pickleball. If you're a beginner, don't be afraid to get your head handed to you by a more experienced player, but at the same time, take the opportunity to learn.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, when I first started, there was a guy named Phil, and Phil knows, so it's okay, I can say Phil. Phil bullied me big time. Nice guy off the court, royal jerk on the court. Okay. I mean, he would tell me, you know what, get off this court, you're not good enough. And I watched him like literally slam things and blah, blah. I mean, just treat newbies like, and everything in the maternal part of me wanted to strangle him,
In like, Christian love.
In Christian love, because, he should know better. I mean, it's like he's my age, look. But I will tell you, what's interesting is after a while, he got known as being the jerk, and my friend David Harp, who actually wrote the foreword to the book, mentored Phil a little bit and, kind of took Phil under his wing and tried to get Phil to kind of like knock it off a little. Well, just a couple of weeks ago, and this is kind of interesting, Phil has always supported me, except for being on the same court with him. But when I published this book, everybody knew it was him that I wrote about, who knew the locals. And what was really interesting was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I went to play, and Phil hadn't been there in a while. And this particular day, he showed up. He was there, and he had just gotten out of the hospital and almost died. Oh. He said, "Come over here. I want to talk to you." And I said, "Sure." And he, because now he's really super sweet to me. He goes, "I want you to know, I almost died." And he said, "You're not going to believe this." I go, "I'm not." And he's like, "No." He goes, "Somebody actually went and bought your book and brought it to me in the hospital."
Wow.
Now Phil's a believer, by the way, and he told me, he said, "I read some of it while I was in the hospital." And I said, "That's just so cool, that, he would take the time to tell me that it ministered to him, and it's made other people more aware of how they treat people." I had my friend Beth write me a card. She's a Catholic, and she said, "You know what? I don't want to be dirty rice," because I write about Dr. Thomas Emoto's rice experiment. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So this is it's controversial, but basically, this doctor, he decided he was going to put rice in 3 different jars, one that said love, hate, and ignore. And he put white rice in each one, and then he spoke words of love to the love, hate, and he ignored the other one. And the rice changed colors. So the ignored one and the one spoke the hate turned black, while the one with love words spoke, it remained white. Mm-hmm. And the idea, a lot of New Agers will say, "Oh, well, see, that's proof that you can speak things into existence stuff." Well, this doctor did this experiment with rice, but he also did it with ice, frozen ice. Mm-hmm. I guess that's the only way ice is, right? Frozen. But he spoke the same type of words, and under a microscope, he could see the loving words. It was like a snowflake, and the harsh words were like jagged. So I quote Ephesians 4:29 in my book, which says, "Let no unwholesome word proceed out of your mouth, but only such a word that's good for edification, according to the need of the moment, even on the pickleball court." So that will give grace to those who hear. And that includes you, right? You hear your own words. And so, I've had friends say, you know what, I was in a tournament and my partner sucked and I lost because they were awful. How do I deal with it, Stacy?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, how would you deal with it? Did you read my book? So you would think that adults would know this stuff, right? But I'm telling you, there are a million life lessons in sports. And it just so happened that pickleball is the one that the Lord used me with. So.
You talk about God dealing with you. You mentioned that earlier on, but you also in the book write about the power of prayer during pickleball. Now, I presume you're talking about something more than, oh, Lord, let me make this next shot, and I promise I'll, ... What did you see generally speaking, in terms of the power of prayer in this context, and specifically a specific prayer for a fellow player?
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that. I don't think anybody else has asked me that question. And I've been interviewed by 2 psychics, actually, who read this book. Well, my friend Joe, who I dedicated the book to, he passed away a couple years ago. His wife, Sharon, at the time, was having some health problems, and she wasn't walking real well. And so and she played pickleball, but she was out of the game for a while. And anyway, to make a long story short, she came one day and she was like, you know what, I'm not doing really good. I'm walking with a walker and all that other stuff. Now, I didn't know if she was a believer or not. Just because she was raised in Tennessee doesn't mean she's a Christian. I don't know. I do know she is now. I didn't at the time, though, that this happened. And I felt like the Lord wanted me to pray for her, but I was like, I don't want to pray for her. No, it's okay. And so I went home and, argued with the Lord about it, as a good daughter of the King would do. And I ended up speaking to my friend Tommy Norman, who's been on Periscope for many years. She talks a lot about healing and stuff. And Tommy exhorted me, and she said, you know what? You need to go pray for this woman. I don't care if you're uncomfortable. There's other people around there. Go pray for her next time. And so I kept praying. Every time I showed up, Sharon wouldn't be there because I don't want to pray for her because I was scared, Finally, one day I show up, though, and she's there. And I'm like, oh, all right. I told you I would do it. So I go up to her and I sit down on the bench and I say to Sharon, you know what? How are you doing? She goes, oh, I'm not doing really good. By the way, she's in her mid-70s. And I go, oh, that's really sad. I said, would it be okay if I prayed for you? And you get a picture. I'm sitting on these metal benches. And she's like, yeah. And there's other players. Everybody's sitting behind, and people are playing. And she goes, oh, I'll take any prayer I can get. I said, okay, let me pray for you. And so I put my arm around her and bowed my head and prayed something like, Lord, please heal Sharon in Jesus' name. And afterwards I said, Sharon, I want you to know that Jesus loves you. And I just prayed for you in Jesus' name that you're going to be healed. 3 days later, Joe comes back and he says, Sharon was healed.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
What was your reaction at that point, Lord? What would have been if I had prayed when you first asked me? I mean, what went through your mind?
What went through my mind was, honestly, are these guys Christians? Because I had this, I didn't know. I was more wrapped up in me than anything. And that's really what this stupid book is about. But my book is about. It's about just learning to be obedient and go, you know what? This isn't all about you. God can use whatever. And I will tell you that my friend Mia, I write about her in my book too, because you asked about the ministry aspect. Well, your listeners know most of them, or some of them. I've hosted Bible News Radio for almost 20 years, right? And, the heart of an apologist or an evangelist, that's what I have because I want people to know the Lord. I want Christians to be encouraged in their faith. And well, my friend Mia came to the Lord through the show. She's a life flight paramedic. In fact, she gave me a really cool life flight paramedic thing. When she came to visit me, I had this complete stranger come to my house. She lives in Ohio. And long story short, discipled her through the internet. And about 2 or 3 years later, we were talking about baptism, and she wanted to get baptized. So she drove down from Ohio to here to Tennessee because she wanted, well, me and Randall had been, mentoring her for a while. And basically, I said, do you want Randall to baptize you or do you want me to baptize you? She said, I want you to do it. I said, okay. So it's kind of like fall, and we had nowhere to baptize her, but she also wanted to learn how to play pickleball. So the weekend she came down, I took her to the pickleball, to the rec center. We prayed ahead of time up in our bedroom and asked the Lord to give us a special blessing. Just because she drew. How many people do you know? First of all, you meet online through your ministry, and then they drive from one state to another to have you baptize them, which is literally a 1-second event,
Yeah, tell me about it. We've in our trips to Israel, Jordan River, people saying, "Would you do it?" I'm like,
yeah.
Who am I?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So we prayed this special prayer, and then we went and played pickleball, and then we went into the pool. And we actually put this on Periscope at the time. We live streamed it. And I prayed for her, I baptized her. And then afterwards, we went into the locker room. This is where it gets kind of fun. We were in the locker room, and there was this older woman in the locker room changing. And she says to me and Mia, how you doing? And I said, well, we're doing really good. I just baptized Mia into Jesus. And she goes, that's so cool. I go, so how are you? She goes, I'm doing good. I go, where are you from? And she goes, I'm from heaven.
Okay.
I go, really? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And there was something else we said, but then within a few seconds, I turn around, this woman is gone, and me and Mia are there, and we're like, what just happened? So we run up front after we get dressed, we go up to the front desk. And by this time I told Randall, and Randall's like, it was an angel. It was an angel. I go, well, let's see what the front desk says, okay? Because everybody at the front desk knows everybody that comes in here. So I go up to the front desk and I said, all right. I said, I just have a question. And they're like, what? I said, have you seen a person that looks like this, this, and this? And they're like, nope. Why? And I said, well, just because we were in the locker room and this person said that they were from heaven and all this other stuff. Well, by then the counter people came up and they're like, oh, you know what? There's a lot of weird things happening here today. That must have been amazing. Like, okay.
Okay. So like, okay, well, yeah, just one more weird thing for mark the calendar for the. They didn't see anybody come out or go in who matched that description.
Nope.
Small enough town they would have known if it was somebody new.
Yep.
Hmm.
And where my theology comes into play here, though, is nowhere in Scripture do I ever see a female angel.
Yeah.
But God can do whatever the heck He wants, I guess. But
well, certainly there were Elohim that manifested as female. I mean, some of the most popular fallen angels in the pagan realm throughout history. We talked before this program began about Inanna, Ishtar, Astarte, Aphrodite, Venus, same entity, different names, Artemis, another manifestation of this particular entity. So, just because we don't see, I mean, the only ones mentioned in the Bible are Gabriel and Michael, but presumably, even though in heaven they neither marry nor give in marriage, when they manifest amongst us, there's nothing that says they only do it in this form. It does say in the book of Hebrews that we have entertained angels unawares.
Well, yeah, I believe that was an angel. And Mia did too, and it was just like the whole circumstances of that day were just, and again, it's tied to pickleball in this roundabout way, but it really has to do with the ultimate point of my book, which is the relationship with Jesus is the cure. It's there's so much that we do in our daily lives that we don't realize God's using us, like in the way we get used, as evidenced by these stories that I've told in the book, which is a little book, but
yeah, I saw some of that when I was in outside sales, and I had a wiser brother in Christ, an older fella, tell me, it's like, look, I know you're frustrated in outside sales. Sharon and I had been doing the podcast, and we had started doing the Gilbert House Fellowship, our weekly Bible study, also as a podcast. But it was always evenings and weekends because that's all the time that I had. I was out there, on the road 5 days a week. He pointed out to me something that had not occurred to me. He said, you have a ministry wherever you are. And I began thinking, oh, yeah, the conversation about Bible prophecy with the guy I talked to in, such and such a town last week, or discussion about with another fella about a niece that was having a very, very difficult time in her life. Things like that don't occur to you. It's like the joke about the Baptist preacher who's praying to God to be saved from the 500-year flood that's sweeping through his town, and as he keeps climbing to the attic and then the roof of his house, and a boat comes along from get in, Pastor. No, the Lord's going to save me. The Lord's going to save me. A helicopter comes by, Lord's going to, and finally he perishes in the flood. And upon reaching heaven, asks the Lord, why didn't you save me? I sent you a boat and a helicopter. What else did you want? We're looking for the, heavens to part and this beam of light from the heavens to shine down on with the choir of angels. Instead of, hey, look, it's this person who needs help is right in front of you.
I will tell you, a couple of weeks ago in our pickleball community, one of the women who I don't think is a believer, her daughter has cancer. And our group of women said, hey, let's do something for her. And within like a day or two, raised $600 to give to her, and it's that community that, we see things in church. Church is supposed to do that. But here, I see the church acting like the church outside, quote, the church, and there's people, though, who are being ministered to in that way. And, Derek, it's interesting. I never dreamed that I would be asked to lead a Bible study, but I've had people from other states contact me and say, hey, will you come and speak to my church virtually? How are we supposed to start a pickleball ministry? And I'm like, I don't know. That's not what I'm about. Just so you know, this is, I've had other people say, where's the Bible study companion book that goes with this? I said, I don't know. Maybe it's in my head, I guess. I don't. So you just don't know, right?
There are all kinds of verses, though, that would be really appropriate for that. I've just been communicating with somebody who was asking me a question about the courts of heaven. So maybe that's the place to start. Enter his courts with thanksgiving and praise.
There you go. The pickleball courts. Yeah. I actually asked a friend of mine, wouldn't it be cool if Jesus played pickleball with us? Do you think he'd let us win? I don't know, but yeah.
You use a phrase in the book, pickleball faith. How do you define that?
So pickleball faith was actually just the title that came to me because it's about my faith. It's about me working out my faith. And I actually, believe it or not, I had people in some of the big popular pickleball groups. When I put that title out there, I had a couple of atheist pickleball players attack me, start mocking me because of the title. They didn't read it. My friends locally who aren't believers who did read it were like, wow, this book is great. It's not preachy or anything. It's not. It's largely what I've told you already. If I sound like a preacher to you, then I tell on myself through this whole thing. But so it's about my faith in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the gospel is clearly presented in the last chapter, Pickleball Faith. If people don't want to read about that, then don't read the last chapter, but you can read the rest of the book.
You state that the relationship is the cure. What do you mean by that?
So when I was in grad school, finishing all my hours to be a marriage and family therapist, I had supervision. And Paul Alexander was my supervisor. At the end of supervision, he would always say to everybody, it doesn't matter the modality that people, it doesn't matter any of this other junk that it's at the end of the day, it's the relationship that you have with the therapist. You as the therapist, it's the relationship you have with the client. That is the cure. And that's what it's about. It's about relationships above anything else. And for the believer, it's our relationship with Christ that's the cure that we take to other places. He's the great physician. He's the one that changes us, makes us less selfish, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's the one that gives greenies to a brat like me who says, no, I'm not going to give you money for the Philippines. Even though the Lord used Filipinos early in my Christian life, you'd think I would want to bless all Filipinos.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just, it's like going, Father, yep, this is more important to me, my relationship with you, than other stuff. And we get it so screwed up, especially in the Christian world, because we put people on pedestals that don't belong there.
Mm.
And then, it just goes haywire. So we can keep the relationship with Christ focused, then we can do better.
Amen. Well, what do you hope people who read Pickleball Faith take away from the book? Christian, non-Christian, whatever.
That it's okay to be real. I mean, there's lots of different things, but for me, that's the thing, is just be yourself, be real. And let God use you broken as you are. You know what? As I told one other interviewer, it's about taking the log out of your own eye. Because if you look at the news and media, one of the things that drives me crazy, and I'm not talking about you here, but I am talking about other people that I see in Christian media constantly, pointing the fingers, going, look at them, the world's doing this. Oh, duh, of course that's the world's supposed to be. What's your sin? Why don't you take the log out of your own stinking eye and deal with your own stuff? Try not to swear.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about? It's like God didn't call us to police the world. No, he said to expose the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but he also told us to abide in him and to love one another and to love our enemies and to, bless those who persecute us and to that despitefully use us, the hard stuff that we don't like to talk about. So I would say, take the log out of your own eye, but just know that when God's doing it, he does it lovingly and he does it, he has a sense of humor. He knows you. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, he knows you. Yeah, he does.
The log in my eye feels so comfortable there, though. I don't know what it'll feel like without the log in my eye anymore. Absolutely true. Pickleball Faith, Inspiration on and Off the Court. Stacy Lynn Harp is the author. You can find her online at hearttug.org. And Stacy, I know you've got an app. People follow Bible News Radio on your app?
Yes. Actually, it's the Heart Tug International app.
Okay.
We put it under our nonprofit because that's, just like you had your little dog. We had our little dog Tug, and he died. So we named our ministry after Tug, Heart Tug International.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'll put a link in the show notes to the website and also for the app. The app is developed by the same people that do the Gilbert House app, so we can vouch for it being very, very user-friendly and also a good way to bypass the gatekeepers of big tech Stacy, it's good to talk with you again. It's been a long time, and we appreciate what you do, your perseverance, and your willingness to take a different approach to topics that we as Christians should be addressing all the time. But hey, who knew? The pickleball court is another type of Mars Hill.
It is. I appreciate you letting me come on. It's cool.
Again, the book is Pickleball, Faith, Inspiration on and Off the Court by Stacy Lynn Harp. You'll find a link in the show notes to where you can find a copy of the book. Whether you're watching or listening, just check the notes below, follow the link, and get a copy of Pickleball, Faith. Coming up, did you know that the most qualified person in America to discuss the trials and tribulations, the experience of being a black man in America, is an 80-year-old white woman? Yes, apparently that is the case. And that is the subject of this week's Bless Their Pointy Little Heads. That and more straight ahead as A View from the Bunker continues. We've recorded a lot of video over the last 8 years, and we're truly thankful that so many of you have been blessed by our teachings, presentations, our travel documentaries of our tours through Israel. But sending videos to other parts of the world can get expensive, so we've now made all of our video content available on demand. Stream our video in full HD with instant access at gilberthouse.org/video. And during the months of May and June, you can save 20% with promo code VIDEO20 at checkout. That's VIDEO20. Video on demand for as little as $3 for 7 days access and 20% off with promo code VIDEO20. But if you prefer DVDs, that promo code works for you too. Log on to gilberthouse.org/store, use VIDEO20 at checkout, and save 20% on all DVDs. 20% off all streaming video and DVDs with promo code VIDEO20 at gilberthouse.org. Driving the internet to think every Sunday night from the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'll find us online at VFTB.net. Among other places, you'll find us, of course, at gilberthouse.org, DerekPGilbert.com, on social media, Twitter at View from Bunker, my personal Twitter feed at Derek Gilbert, on Facebook, the page View from the Bunker. Of course, we've got a new community on our app, our free app that I told you about earlier, where you can log in there and share thoughts about our various programs. Also, share prayer requests with other groups, with other people who have logged in and are using the app. You also get us on some of the new social media sites, Truth Social, Gab Me, We Get Her, at Derek P. Gilbert. Well, it is now reliably told to us, we are reliably informed that the most qualified person for understanding the experience of a black man in America is an 80-year-old white woman. There's not much you can say to this because it is laughable. I do not watch The View on ABC, not even for, stuff to just, material for the program, really. But this was just so beyond the pale that wanted to share this with you. Joy Behar, co-host of The View, 80-year-old white woman, said this about 2024 Republican presidential candidate, Senator Tim Scott.
And he's one of these guys who, he's like Clarence Thomas, black Republican who believes in pulling yourself by your bootstraps, rather than, to me, understanding the systemic racism that African Americans face in this country and other minorities. He doesn't get it, neither does Clarence.
Right.
And that's why they're Republicans.
Yeah.
Okay, so 80-year-old Joy Behar, encouraged by her co-hosts on the program, Whoopi Goldberg, Sonny Hostin, and the rest, who all nodded in agreement, sagely agreeing that 80-year-old Joy Behar has a better understanding of what it means to be a black man than the eminently successful Senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott, and Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. I would suggest that both of whom got to where they are by as she said, picking themselves up by their bootstraps in the face of whatever racism they may have encountered. I deny that there is systemic racism in the United States. Anyone who thinks that the United States is the same today as it was, 80 years ago, Ms. Behar, just isn't paying attention or is deliberately being disingenuous for political purposes. But again, when you see something like that, and of course the echo chamber that is the audience of The View, all nodding and applauding in agreement, all you can say is, bless their pointy little heads. Well, Skywatch TV's virtual conference, One World Rising, is still on. My presentation on the World Economic Forum's Great Reset Initiative and why it actually is regressive. I mean, literally regressive, wanting to roll back the clock about 5,000 years, more than 5,000 years, actually, to the time of Nimrod. And I mean that quite literally. Archaeologically speaking, we can point to certain characteristics of the ancient kingdom of Nimrod, the city-state of Uruk, and see some parallels to what the World Economic Forum would like to bring forth in the world today. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Or else. That is just one of 24 presentations and all 6 Skywatch Films documentaries. You get access to all of that for 90 days from the day you sign up. So even though this has been out there now for a month, you haven't missed any time. You can still take advantage of it at defenderconference.com. That's the website to register, defenderconference.com. Now, we are just, let's see, as I'm looking at this, we're just a week away from visiting our friends in Sparta, Missouri. This would be, just making sure I've got my dates right on the calendar as we try to work ahead a little bit here. The folks at His Call Ministries in Sparta, Missouri, which, if you're looking at a map, it's off US 65, east of 65, between Springfield and Branson. So if you're in the Ozarks, come out and join us for the weekend. Sharon and I will be teaching on Friday evening, Saturday during the day, and then Sunday morning. And our focus this year, this will be the 3rd time that we've been back, and we've really enjoyed getting to know Alec and Ginny Wade and the people there at His Call Ministries. Joy Stevenson, who coordinates things, really doing an amazing job. This will be kind of an intimate gathering. They've got room for about 100 people, so make sure you sign up quickly. I don't know how close they are to being full up, but you can find out more online, hiscallministries.com. And again, our focus this time will be on our recent trip to Israel and what we learned there from archaeology. The stones are crying out. The rocks are crying out. The valley of the shadow of death is a real place. And a lot of stuff happened there for specific reasons. We'll be talking about this through the course of the weekend and kind of building one presentation on top of another, because when you suddenly see all of this come together, some of the Psalms all of a sudden make a lot more sense. Like 22, 23, 42, 68, a lot of stuff in the Psalms that suddenly makes sense when you understand the religious beliefs of the people around ancient Israel. So again, this will be June 9, 10, and 11 next weekend at His Call Ministries in Sparta, Missouri. Find out more online and reserve your spot at hiscallministries.com, hiscallministries.com. Late July, we will be in Ohio at the Go Therefore Conference. This is at the Harvest Revival Center in Brookline, Ohio. I know early on I was saying Brookville. No, it is Brookville, Ohio. Excuse me. I forgot to change my notes here. Brookline does not exist. There is no Brookline, Ohio. Forget I said that. Strike the record. Brookville, Ohio. Thank you. L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Mike Spalding, of course, he's organizing the conference. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny will be there. Coach Dave Daubenmeier, David Hebner, Dr. Greg Reed. You want to talk some spiritual warfare? Greg Reed, Vicki Joy Anderson, David Paxton, Tom Dunn. That will be a powerful lineup. Our good friend Kenny C. will be there as well. Randy Conway, sort of the poet laureate of our little fringe Christianity area segment, but he's also got some very important content and very important things to share. Nathan Brannon will be meeting him, and we hope we see you there as well. This will be a wonderful gathering, July 28th and 29th at the Harvest Revival Center. You can sign up now at gothereforeconference.com, gothereforeconference.com. We'll be back in Israel next year. Speaking of Israel and what we will see, what you can see when you join us, and our special guest, Timothy Alberino. This will be March 31st through April 9th of 2024 with an optional 3-day extension over to Jordan. And we encourage you to take that because there are things on the east side of the Jordan River that are very, very significant, both historically and prophetically. And we're going to add some things next year that we saw during our pre-tour expedition this year that we want to add for future tours just because, again, it relates to this long supernatural war between Jesus and the dead. So don't miss it. Gilbert'sinisrael.com is the website. Gilbert'sinisrael.com. That will point you to the place to get more information and sign up. I understand we've got half a dozen people already registered for next April, and we are looking forward to it. Man, it gets really emotional there. And when we finally get our tour video from this year together, you'll see. The older I get, the more emotional I get anyway. But it gets overwhelming at some of these sites that we see, and it really makes the Bible come alive. Gilbert'sinisrael.com, or you can log on to gilberthouse.org/travel, and we're finalizing details on a planned tour of Turkey next spring. We'll tell you more about that as soon as we have those details. So, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen or watch wherever you are consuming this podcast, whether it's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever fine podcasts are sold. And please give us a like, a thumbs up, review at wherever it is that you are listening or watching. Our announcer, the inimitable DC Good. And A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.